It seems to be past my bedtime and I'm watching 3 AM videos. Good, no one is watching. Oh, this looks like a really cool video.
Hello, we are in my basement because we are going to teach you how to summon Among Us. For those who don't know, Among Us is a dead meme and I'm just doing this because some of you think it's not a dead meme. And also, I am not a guy who should be in prison for kidnapping children. But like and follow for a free cookie and go to the link below the description to claim a free prize. Oh no, it's Among Us. Run.
So I'm just supposed to scare you or something? You know I'm not really Among Us, right? I don't get paid enough for this. I quit.
Okay, fine, leave. I don't care about your existence.
I think I should try this out. Here I am in my basement. It's time to summon the Among Us. Among Us, 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 Among Us. Among Us, 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 Among Us. Among us, 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 among us. Among us, 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 among us. Among us, 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 through infinite plus 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 plus. Eternities later among us, 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 sus 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 sus. I've been in here for so long and yet I'm still young. I am going to see what the outside looks like now. Wow.
I have been summoned.
It's time to restart society. I am going to chop down some trees with a broken axe.
A few hours later.
I think I have enough wood.
He thinks he's the only one left, but he doesn't know that he's not alone. Of course he isn't. Neither are both of you. Where did you come from? The guy that you were spying on summoned me earlier. You shouldn't be here. Get out. No you.
The fight lasts for a while and Among Us wins with young Stanley being sent back to the past. But this next scene shows you Evan's POV doing the fight. What was that? Cool, right? Took me a while to make this. I'm now going to find food. This is actually pretty peaceful, even though I'm starving to death. I think I should get out of here. I think I lost it. It took a really long time for him to get back to his home base.
It's time to get revenge. I am tired. I'm now going to go to sleep. What the?
I know how to cure your deep voice.
No, you don't.
So now is the time we do a very boring, but somehow epic fight.
Okay. What was that? I was just about to go to Ohio.
Hey, he pushed me out of the room.
I need to see if this thing works.
Where did he go? I guess I'll have to use this time machine to travel time and space to find him. Doing so will cause the red paint on my suit to decay, causing me to look like a normal astronaut, and also cause my voice to be different, and the visor on my helmet will be more yellow, but I will have to do it if I want to find him.
That was a crazy dream, and now all of a sudden I have the idea to go to Ohio.
This is not over yet.